Gonna pin that comment. Okay, folks, currently we're looking at satellite imagery, and off to the left there, we can see the developing mid-latitude cyclone making its way towards the Pacific Northwest. And this is likely going to make landfall, so to speak, somewhere on the Washington coast and go across the Olympic Peninsula with a tight gradient on the south end of it. And taking a look at the most recent HRRR run, it's the high resolution rapid refresh model. This is the latest, not the latest, but this is the latest run that goes out 48 hours. And here we see tomorrow morning brings a lot of heavy rain, convective rain up onto the coast.
Oh wait, there we go. It just was really behind.
Ah, okay. That's fine. Jonathan scared me. I was like, whoa, what am I missing? All right. By the way, guys, go ahead and let me know how the audio is, how the stream quality is. I lowered the bit rate just a little bit because right now I am in a hotel in Astoria, Oregon. Okay, so yeah, this is what the HRRR is showing for the position of the low tomorrow, and it crosses it over the north end of the Olympic Peninsula with a tight gradient around the south side. And it actually has a lot of convective showers, and the Severe Prediction Center issued a marginal risks for severe thunderstorms down here in Oregon, and even a 2% tornado risk down there on the coast. And this is looking at the National Weather Service Seattle forecast area, and we also get a little bit of the National Weather Service Portland area here. And the National Weather Service in Seattle has issued a high wind advisory for almost its whole entire region, with the exception of right there on the northern side of the Olympic Peninsula. But wind advisory for the coast, north and central coast. We have a high wind warning for the southwest Washington coast, and then a wind advisory for the whole entire I-5 corridor in the lowlands of Washington. And if we were to go ahead and take a look at this wind advisory, I'm going to scoot this over so you guys can see that better. Wind advisory, that is not the one I wanted to check out. We'll check out this one here. There we go. And I'm going to make sure it's in your guys' view, and it is. Okay. So lots of areas that this includes. You guys can see that, and feel free to go back and look at all these areas. But like I said, basically the majority of Western Washington, wind advisory in effect starting tomorrow at 9 a.m., Saturday at 9 a.m., and it is in effect until midnight on Saturday night. What for southeast to southwest winds, gusting from 35 to 40 miles per hour at time, and that might actually be a little bit low too. The European model, as I'm going to show you guys right here, actually brings a 53 mile per hour gust to Seattle tomorrow. And that would be fairly damaging with all the leaves and the trees and whatnot. And sometimes the European model even underdoes the wind. But before I get ahead of myself, I'm going to go back to the warnings real quick. I'm going to look at the warning down here in southwest Washington. High wind warning, and this is also a warning that goes down the Oregon coast and also into the coastal range along the coast. High wind warning in effect from 5 a.m. on Saturday until 11 p.m. on Saturday. What for south winds, 20 to 30 miles per hour, gusting up to 65 miles per hour. And if I could add anything to this high wind warning, is that the strong wind could, for a time, come really strong directly out of the west with a bent back occlusion. And I'm going to show you guys that a little bit here, but they're saying damaging winds will blow down trees and power lines. There'll be power outages expected, especially for high profile vehicles. Travel will be difficult. And before I get any further into it, I'm just going to check the comments here real fast. I didn't have time to schedule a live stream event, so I apologize about that for the lack of heads up. But if you're enjoying the stream so far, go ahead and hit that like button. That'll definitely help out this live stream. And if you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and do that as well. And now we're going to get back into talking about some more of the details here. So this is looking at the HRRR, and I just want to show you guys kind of where this thing goes on the latest run. So begins to bring pretty strong wind onto the coast fairly early in the morning, and it's also going to be spinning around it heavy showers and thunderstorms, and those showers are going to push heavier wind down towards the surface. But notice this, the wind does shift from being out of the south to being more out of the west on the south side of this low, and also on the southwest side of this low. And this right here is called a bent back occlusion, or some people might call it the scorpion tail of the mid-latitude cyclone. And this is how we get some of our most damaging winds. Now notice, it's not going to be a widespread area. It's not going to be super wide, but there could be some localized spots on the coast tomorrow that, if this is correct, could get some pretty strong wind. Like, we're talking sustained wind around 48 knots, which,
56 miles per hour.
yeah, 48 knots to miles per hour, that is about, 55 miles per hour. And if we loop this forward a little bit more, it also brings some really strong wind right there into the Washington coast, and then brings a tight pressure gradient up the I-5 corridor through Seattle up to about Edmonds. And if we were to look at gusts here, yeah, I mean, this bend back occlusion, if it actually occurs like this, is going to mean business. It's going to have wind gusts up around 70 miles per hour, maybe even higher, coming out of the west, not just the south, out of the west onto the coast. And then that moves up to the Washington coast with some gusts up around 60 or higher. But this latest run for Washington State specifically shows something pretty interesting. Zooming forward here. So this right here is about 6 p.m. It's bringing gust over 60 miles per hour from Ocean Shores to Westport to the Long Beach Peninsula. And then 7 p.m., that pressure gradient, that pressure rise starts moving more into the interior of Washington. And then by 8 p.m., this model run brings a gust of 49 miles per hour to places like Tacoma and Enumclaw. And then this is something that's interesting. And take this with a grain of salt, of course, but it does bring wind gust to Seattle close to 60 miles per hour. Right there over the water, there's a spot that's 59. But just off the water around like SeaTac and whatnot, it's calling for wind gusts right around the same magnitude as the European model, which the European model is calling for, I think, 53 around SeaTac. Pivotal Weather, they have Seattle marked as downtown Seattle instead of SeaTac, so it kind of throws me off a little bit. And then also has what I believe is westerly wind up there in the Strait of Juan de Fuca at that time. Yep, strong westerly wind, gusting up towards 55 to 60 miles per hour just off of Port Angeles, and bringing westerly winds across the southern portions of the San Juans and into Whidbey Island around 45, 50 miles per hour. So that would be pretty impactful. And again, looking at the European here, it brings also not just southerly wind, but westerly wind into the southwest Washington coast. And I'm actually going to back up a step here. There you go. You can see that better. So there's the strong westerly wind going straight into the Washington coast, sustained like right around 40 miles per hour, and gusting on the Washington coast up towards 60 to 65 miles per hour, which is really right in line with the high wind warning, with the exception of the high wind warning says the wind is only going to be out of the south. You need to be prepared for that wind out of the west. I think that's actually going to be the most damaging wind, is when this westerly surge of wind comes right off of the ocean and onto the coast. It's a bit more, it happens when the lows come in like this, but The more common wind direction on the coast is south, southerly wind, not westerly, but it does happen on occasion. All right, I'm going to pause real quick for looking at the comments here before I go any further. I'm going to put this into a loop while I am talking. There we go. All right, going to look at comments right now for just a minute here. Scrolling back. All right, good evening, Sasquatch. Good evening, Sasha. Hello, West Coast weather.
Hello.
All right, just seeing if you guys have any questions real fast. All right, so lots of comments, not that many questions. Kana Michelle says, leaves are still on the trees, so probably lots of falling branches, maybe some down trees. Yeah, I think there is going to be some tree damage for sure tomorrow. And that's also going to result in power outages as branches and trees fall on power poles. Thank you, Golden Girl, for posting this link on Facebook. And yeah, that's one thing too. If you guys are enjoying the stream, please go ahead and show that by pushing that like button on the stream. That always helps out. And also subscribe if you haven't already. Jen Ninja asks what the winds will be like for Arlington, and then Davina asks what the winds will be like for Lacey. Arlington is a bit of a wild card, I think. Let's see. Let's go ahead and...
Yeah, I'd probably say the same thing.
Yeah. Arlington. Sometimes the westerly winds coming out of the Strait of Juan de Fuca and the southerly winds can kind of cancel each other out in these windstorm solutions. I think it looks like there is going to be some decently strong wind. The HRRR is calling for 40-mile-per-hour winds over West Snohomish County tomorrow ahead of the low. And this would be southerly winds around noon tomorrow. Yeah, it's going to be noticeably windy for much of the day around western Washington tomorrow as this low approaches. And then as the real pressure rise comes up on the south, that's going to be the real most damaging aspect of the storm, most likely. All right, so in regard to Arlington, I would say in the earlier part of the day, I wouldn't be surprised if Arlington saw some gusts starting, maybe around 11 or noon, up to 30 to 35 miles per hour, and could get a gust up towards 40. And then I'm not sure if Arlington's going to get in on the pressure rise. The low might be crossing over a little bit too far north on this HRRR run. Yeah, the real tight gradient is like between Marysville and Chehalis. That's a pretty tight gradient right there. Down there by Lacey, which is really close to Olympia, which is right about there, you guys have a higher chance of getting in on the stronger wind tomorrow evening as this comes through. The HRRR model for the first part of the day down there by Lacey, starting by about 10 a.m., brings gusts anywhere from 30 to 40 miles per hour down there. And then it'll stay breezy throughout the day. And then as the pressure rise approaches later in the evening, like around 6, 7 o'clock, maybe a little later, down there by Olympia, has gusting anywhere from 45 to, I would say 45 to 55 on this model run. Let's take a look at the European. And by the way, guys, I'm in a hotel right now if it looks different. In a hotel in Astoria in position for this thing. Yeah, Lacey 40. The yeah, 40 to 50 on the European for that area. And the European actually brings that pressure rise a little bit further north into Snohomish County, I'm noticing here. Yeah. So, I mean, if the low goes a little bit further north, like the European, then that pressure rise would go further north as well, and that would bring more strong wind up more of the I-5 corridor. There's a notable difference between the European and the HRRR, kind of. Yeah, or it's just more of the westerlies canceling out the southerlies. I've experienced this in Washington State. Kind of what happens is we have the Olympic Mountains over here and we have the Cascade Mountains right here. In between those two mountain ranges is essentially a really, really wide valley, but it kind of acts like a funnel. And then we get the Strait of Ontefuca where the Olympic Mountains just cut off, and suddenly that tunnel opens up. And so this tunnel between Olympia, Tacoma, Seattle is really a strong corridor for windstorms, but it doesn't mean that ever cannot get strong wind. I've seen ever get strong wind in other storms, but it seems like there's amplification that can happen between the mountain ranges. All right, going to take another look at your guys's comments here. Going to turn this onto a forecast loop in fast mode real fast so you guys have something interesting to look at while I am talking, looking at the comments. All right. All right, looking at your comments just a bit more here. Oh, so the Facebook announcement link is not functioning. Okay, let me fix that. Just saw that. Thank you for whoever said that. Oh, yeah, never posted. Shoot. Ah, it looks like plenty of people posted the link. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. I copied the link, put it in the post, and never pushed enter, apparently. Okay. So Lake Stevens. So Jill, I'm not willing to really say whether or not Lake Stevens is going to get the wind bad or not. These windstorms can kind of, like, the models can only do so well. So there's a chance, I would say there's a chance that Lake Stevens could get some gusts tomorrow up to 40, 45, possibly stronger. But there's a chance that the westerlies and the southerlies can cancel each other out later in the day. Kana asks, am I going to be driving around tomorrow? Yes, I will be live streaming tomorrow. I'm probably going to end up starting the storm chase in the northwest Washington coast, actually, and I'm going to follow the pressure rise into Washington as I head north towards home. Davina asks, will it be strong enough to have power outages? Yes. I don't know if you guys saw Cliff Mass's blog earlier, but he encouraged all the power companies to be fully staffed tomorrow. And so the leaves still have a lot of trees on them, and this is really the first decent blow of autumn. We've had some wind, but not like this. And so there's going to be some power outages tomorrow for sure. I would say especially from about Edmonds south. And then also areas up north, San Juans and whatnot, could see some pretty strong wind, but that's more common for that area. So all right. And Topinya says that she missed everything. How's Monroe and Lake Stevens looking? Well, you guys are under a wind advisory pretty much all of western Washington is, with the exception of the northern part of the Olympic Peninsula. So around there for Lake Stevens and Monroe, we're talking about they are calling for gusts up to 35 to 40 at times. But I think for many areas that they talk about in this wind advisory, there's a chance that there could be stronger winds. So it's something that we got to keep an eye on for sure. Okay, so yeah, taking a look at the satellite imagery again, here's our storm right here. It's already there. You kind of have a gap between the storm that affected us today and the gap that is the storm that's going to affect us tomorrow. And something I did want to look at here is looking at the SPC. I'm going to move this over so you guys can see that better. They have issued a marginal risk of severe thunderstorms tomorrow for much of Oregon and also southwest Washington, actually pretty much all of South Washington. And they even included a little 2% tornado risk out there on the Oregon coast. So that's something we're also going to be watching for tomorrow. And then here's rainfall totals for today. A lot of Washington State got over an inch of rain at my home. There's a station right near my home. Wow, there's a couple stations near my home that got almost 2 inches of rain, 1.5 to 2 inches. Seattle looks like got an inch. A couple areas in the Cascades got almost 3 inches. A couple locations in the Olympics, 2.5 inches. Down on the Washington coast, where I was today, 0.93 inches. Yeah, lots of rain. It's beautiful. All right, looking at your guys' comments again real quick, and then I'll see if I can answer any last questions here. Yeah, well, Mama, I mean, there is like PUD in Snohomish County, so there are a couple public utility districts that are not under PSE. What about Hoquiam? So right now, cool kid, they have a wind advisory issued for up there in Hoquiam, but it's looking like the low might make landfall close to Hoquiam, according to some models, which would mean a little bit less wind. I mean, there's going to be some. Actually, wait, sorry. I'm confusing Hoquiam with the place further north. What's the one by Forks? La Push, right. Sorry. Yeah, Hoquiam has a decent chance of seeing some strong wind tomorrow. It's going to start off with southerly, south-southeasterly winds, and then you're probably going to end up getting some westerly winds later in the evening, afternoon, evening, into the night. Yeah, the latest HRRR for Hoquiam, Aberdeen. Yeah, brings wind gusts up to 62 at Hoquiam, and there's gusts even stronger, really nearby, like over there by Ocean Shores, 67. Could be pretty substantial. All right, looking at the comments again. Good evening, Matthew. Western Washington weather has picked up 1.28 inches of rain so far there in Federal Way. Carbonado and Enumclaw, I would say you guys have a decent chance of getting maybe a 40 to 50 mile per hour gust sometime tomorrow evening. You guys are under a wind advisory from the National Weather Service. Arlington, puck to the head. I talked about Arlington a little bit. You guys are under a wind advisory and could get a gust up to 40 miles per hour between like 2 and 4. And then later in the evening, There's a chance that the westerly winds out of the Strait of Juan Fuca and the southerly winds coming up the I-5 corridor could kind of cancel each other out, but there's no guarantee of that. Stephen and Nicole, more wind in Cedro-Woolley expected? Yes. Cedro-Woolley. I would say you guys are going to get some decent wind probably tomorrow morning through early afternoon. Could get a gust up from like 30 to 40 miles per hour. And it's going to start out of the east, actually, and then it's going to switch to being more southerly, and then you guys could get a burst of westerly later in the evening into the night. So be watching for that. That westerly surge, actually, as this low goes over, depending on whether or not the pressure gradient is still tight, this westerly surge into Skagit and Whatcom County could have some problems, create some problems with all the leaves still being on the trees and stuff like that. All right, let me know when you're getting close to ready, Matthew, or Jonathan.
Yeah.
And then I can let you take it away. This is looking at the HRRR composite reflectivity with updraft helicity enabled as well. You can get a pretty good glimpse of the storm. This is about 5 a.m. Going to have this almost like lifting. The warm front's going to be out here, and then the cold front's going to be down here. And this may have some lightning in the cold front as this approaches the shore tomorrow, and it's going to have some segments broken up on it. We're probably going to intercept this somewhere on the Oregon coast. And this is down where there's a slight chance of a tornado tomorrow, water spouts that can come on shore. And then as we head further into the morning, even more thunderstorms could develop and come ashore. And every time one of these thunderstorms comes ashore, it has the potential to be mixing down really strong wind from aloft towards the surface. Like if we look at this right here, there's this storm really close to Cannon Beach on this model. There is a little bit of enhanced wind being pushed down right there. And then as this thing spins around even more, real quick, I want to make sure this is looking good. It's looking pretty good. Yeah, there's just basically just going to be convective showers on and off all day long, especially for Oregon and then eventually for Washington going into the afternoon and the evening as well. So the winds could get stronger when you have these heavy showers going over. And looking at, let's see here, severe 0 to 3 kilometer above ground level Cape. I like looking at this. Quite a bit of Cape instability spinning around tomorrow. And early in the morning is going to be one of the better times just off the coast there. Look at that, bit of a marginal severe sounding picked. And then as the low gets closer, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Another marginal severe sounding. All right, going to take a look at the comments again real quick, and then I'm probably going to sign off here soon. But let me know if you have any last questions in the comments. Vashon Island, you guys are probably going to get reasonably windy tomorrow, it would be my guess. Especially if the pressure rise comes through like the European and the HRRR is showing. You guys could, if the HRRR is right, you guys could get anywhere from 50 to 55 mile per hour gusts out there by Vashon tomorrow night. But currently you're under a wind advisory for up to 40 mile per hour gusts, which may be underdoing it for your area. Ginger, I don't think I can add CC closed captioning to my live streams. I don't think that's possible. Right, Jonathan? I don't think
What? Say that again.
caption. Yeah, I don't think you can do closed captionings for live streams.
I'm trying to set it up on mine. I'm gonna see if it works, but YouTube captions usually aren't like super good.
Yeah. I'll have to look into that for a future chat. Sorry about that. Okay, well, thank you everyone for watching. I am going to go ahead and get some other work done before I call it evening. We're going to get an early start tomorrow. Be checking in for live streams. If you haven't already liked the stream, please make sure and like it before you leave, and also subscribe to the channel. Let your friends and family know about the channel as well.